Kick it off, Lindsay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to MAXtape Live. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, you know what? We really appreciate you being here.
We really do. You guys know who we are at this point. I'm Lindsay Benedetto.
And I'm Craig Rector. And this is Mini Craig.
I prefer to call him Tiny Craig.
Tiny Craig. Tiny Craig.
Okay, well, listen, we had a great chat with Jeremy Gruber, who's the head of artist marketing at Friends at Work. An information-packed conversation today. The guy's brilliant.
I mean, his expertise, education, experience. I mean, he's adjunct professor. I mean, his span in knowledge.
Does it all.
So I was very eager to dive into it, and I think we got to a lot of good stuff, but definitely want him to be a repeat guest. Because there's a lot to learn from him. A lot to learn.
Indeed.
It'd be Nathan Hanks, CEO, Max, calls it the DoubleTree cookie. I'm still not sure. I'm on board with the analogy, but it's been brought up a lot. It's like
I don't get it.
He talks about it with
cookie.
like a whole lot of ingredients, the chocolate chip, like all the things into this cookie, and so I guess it's the DoubleTree cookie. It's the perfect cookie. Would be how he frames it. It's jam packed with all the good stuff, nothing wasted. So
well, that description for this particular conversation, I can get behind.
Yeah. So enjoy our DoubleTree cookie. Thanks for joining the show. From our kind of brief previous talk, I think there's a lot of fun conversations that we can have. I think specifically, your experience and your kind of expertise and the things that you have your hands in, professionally and then personally in your life, seem to span almost every aspect of music. So talk to us a little bit about your background and, currently head of artist marketing, digital strategy for, Friends at Work. But that kind of seems to be just the tip of the iceberg, tip of the spear with, the things that you do and have expertise in.
Sure. So I, as you said, I'm currently the head of what we call artist marketing and digital strategy at Friends at Work. And artist marketing is just a term that we created because now in the music industry, pretty much all marketing exists online in some way. And so where we're really drawing the line is we do the forms of marketing that are around artists engaging with their audience. And that ownership of the audience and the way that an artist cultivates a fan base and uses that to grow their career. So we call that artist marketing. I think a few other companies have started using that term also. It was formerly called digital. Sometimes people call me the head of digital, and that's okay too. And I've been at this company now 7.5 years. We manage John Legend, Charlie Puth, Lindsey Sterling, Raphael Sadiq, Hunter Hayes, a bunch of other artists, both developing and
it's quite a roster
and established. So we've got a really great roster, great people to work with. I mean, John Legend being our kind of flagship client, the company was founded with, and Lindsey Sterling, who've been with the whole time that the company's been around. They're great clients and great people, and they're really the creative drivers of what we do. So we're there to support and help them connect with their audience. What got me here, to go way back is when I was a kid going to punk shows. I walked into a show in a VFW hall when I was 14. The room was still filled with cigarette smoke, and it was, someone threw up a PA and some band was playing in the corner, and it was so much fun and so cool. And then it was also the late 90s, so now this is cool to say, but at the time it was kind of underground. But I went to see bands like Korn were just coming up, and somehow these bands that only got play on college radio were doing packages at arenas. So I saw the Family Values tour in 1998 before they were the mainstream band, and I felt the energy of what a band could do on stage, and I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to understand how that works. And so I play music, I play bass. And when I get involved with something, I like to understand how it works and really get inside of it. So when I started playing bass, I didn't just play bass. I went and did the Berklee Summer Performance Program and studied the instrument. And when it was time for me to decide what to do with my life, that was the only thing I knew that I wanted to do. I went to USC for the music industry program, and I graduated from that in 2005. And that's when the music industry collapsed. So I've spent the last 18 years figuring out what the new music industry is like. And I've been very fortunate to get to participate in that and the growth of digital in the music industry and being a part of that process. And I've worked with some amazing artists. I was the VP of Digital at Concord prior to joining Friends at Work, and I worked at 10th Street Entertainment with working for Alan Kovac, who's an absolute legend, maybe controversial legend, but an absolute legend in the industry, where I learned a lot about marketing and got to work with people like Motley Crue and Papa Roach and Buck Cherry and stuff and big rock bands for a while. So I've gotten to work with a lot of great artists. It's really, really exciting, and I every day get a little closer to that energy I was trying to find when I was a kid.
Man, that's a long road, dedicated chase. So when you work with artists, like Motley Crue, Papa Roach, are you? Is that from the artist management side, or is that from the marketing side? Like, were you on the road with them and enjoying the energy of those shows and that lifestyle, or were you like, back
Behind
at
the
home,
screen,
making it all function?
I have kind of found myself an office guy more than anything. I do go to shows. I don't do tour bus like show to show. So I'm a marketing, again, digital, behind the scenes person. And when I started, also digital has evolved quite a bit. When I started, it was honestly before social media marketing even existed. When I started, digital was called new media, and it was mostly publicity. It wasn't really until about 2008 and 9 that the concept of an artist really owning that relationship with their own audience and driving that relationship with content started being developed, and social media marketing started becoming a discipline in and of itself. So it really was a little bit later that I started doing that kind of work, and I've always been the marketing person at a management company or at a record label. So kind of in the office trying to think of how can we creatively not just reach the fans, but give the fans something that makes them excited and makes them want to participate, and makes it fun to be a fan of an artist.
So I was going to say, you mentioned owning the relationship and really starting that perspective from the digital age and then the social and mobile. And it seems as though, so I'd like to hear how you would define like the owning of the relationship. I have a perspective that starting from the digital age, and probably even before, but the digital age gave great opportunity to reach and to maybe own the creation of music, starting to own even the publishing and distribution of music, and then the ability to build fan base, but losing the ability to actually own the fan base, as opposed to the third-party companies owning the fan base. And so when you say own, do you think that there was benefits in the early 2000s and whatnot, where there was great opportunity to really own that relationship, that once people realized like, oh, we can gate this information from, people that they're building and, then sell it back to them? Or do you think it was always a partition from the beginning of, the digital transition with music?
It's an interesting challenge. There's a lot of complexity in the answer, so I'm going to try and keep it as direct as possible. In my opinion, I use the term ownership as in as opposed to not having any way to reach them at all. That if you think about the transition from, like, let's say 1995 to 2015, in that 20-year span, in 1995, marketing for the music industry, the artist's role was to make the record. The label would help them make a music video to get on MTV, promote the song to go on the radio. And if those things happened, the artist would go on tour. And that's where the relationship occurred, in that room, that I was talking about.
Yeah.
You feel that energy. And that's where the relationship existed. Flash forward to 2015, and you're in the Instagram, the pre-TikTok, Instagram and Facebook era, I would say. There is the challenge that you're talking about, where if you have 10 million Instagram followers, you may not be reaching them. You might be reaching 10% of them or less, and that's really hard. But the very fact that you were able to upload content you control on a small level and reach them is an ownership of the relationship, even if you don't own the data. I think that's the difference, is the difference between owning the relationship and owning the data. Now, that ownership of data is a problem. It's something that I've been struggling with for my whole career, and I'm very focused on email marketing and SMS for that reason. And even SMS makes me nervous because the legal issues around privacy, it's really hard to really own an SMS database. So email is a big deal. Having as much saved as you can of that audience, which is always going to be smaller, but all marketing has to break down into segments in some way. So if your broadcast, say your TikTok is the wide circle, if your Instagram is a little bit in from that circle, that people are kind of following along, that you can reach with some of your content and not others, but then the email list is your core and your hardcore fans. I think it's really important to think of them differently. And I view it that it's really important for artists to think about owning that relationship all the time, because that's honestly the opportunity of the industry right now. It's that gives the artist some control over their destiny, even if it is an imperfect relationship, because there is a third party that controls the data in between.
So when we look at an artist where they create music, but almost fully dependent on the record label in most cases for what's going to be driving their success, and then you look at the barriers of creation, and then they're still kind of dependent on potentially for distribution, and then you start to get with digital like Spotify, and distribution kind of becomes easy, and so it seems as like artists are becoming more and more self-dependent, self-sufficient. After we, let's say, break the barrier of artists being able to sufficiently own the direct relationship with their fans, is there another frontier that artists need to conquer to really fully own their destiny, so to speak, in music?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to answer that question directly, but I'll do my best to not go too far off track on it. I think that the changes that have happened in digital music are the most exciting changes, and it's the best time ever to be an independent artist or record label in the history of the music industry right now. And it's because of the fact that nobody knows what they're doing anymore. Like literally nobody knows what they're doing anymore. And people will speak with a lot of confidence, like they know what they're doing. Yeah. And I'm a marketing executive who works with big artists, and I am admitting on a broadcast medium that nobody knows what they're doing. There is information that you can gather, and there's best practices we can work towards, and there's things we can believe in, and there's the hope that good content will reach people, but nobody knows for sure. And maybe they never knew, but the reason this is exciting is there used to be a time when if you had enough money, enough energy, and enough effort, you could essentially create a hit, right? You could get that radio program. And as long as the song or the artist was good, there was some amount of money you could pump into the system relentlessly and make something happen. The fact is, there is just no one lever that costs millions of dollars anymore. The lever is a TikTok moment, or a really great social campaign, or the right opening slot in a local show or opening slot for a big artist, and that is harder to get. But it's not millions and millions of dollars of radio promotion and time and big music videos and recording studios and producers. It's anybody can make it in their in their own studio, in their bedroom, or in their somewhat nice studio. Anybody can do the TikTok campaign. Anyone can do all these things, and has equal opportunity of success as the big budget campaigns. The big budget campaigns are happening, and they are easier to do probably than the smaller ones, because you've got more teams, you've got more people in it, but the chance of success is so level now that makes it so exciting. It's scary too, because it also takes away the dream that you would have had, like, I'm going to go get signed and be a rock star. Well, getting signed is the starting line, and you have equal chance as the guy who's not signed to get success. But I think that is really exciting, that anybody can make it.
Yeah, no, and that is true and very exciting. So 2 follow-up questions. One is, I think I saw a graph, and it was, something that so at Max, we're tracking the active footprint of, every artist that has a digital footprint. And I think it was up until a few years ago, prior to pandemic, you'd maybe have, this slow curve of up to 1.6 million kind of active artists. And, probably 10% of that is, who have like a substantial fan base. And then all of a sudden, over the last 3-4 years, you're looking at 7+ million. I mean, it's just a hockey stick just shooting way up, which tells us there's more content out there. So with this, and with the fact that anybody can kind of make their mark in the music industry, whether through innovation or being scrappy or having the moments that, kind of the viral moments or whatever, but is the concept of the superstar. I mean, I can think in my head just the most iconic names throughout, music history when you look over the last century. But when I look over those who have been discovered over the last 5-10 years, I don't know that I'm like I really like them, and I have such a strong connection to them. But I'm like, that's not Beyonce, And do we have any more Beyoncés coming down the pipe, or do we think that that's one of the changes that we'll see in the new music industry?
I'm really curious about that too, honestly. I don't have a definitive answer to where I think that's coming from. I was having that conversation internally at Friends at Work a few months ago, where I think I realized, and I would love to test this thesis with your data, that the last artist to cross over from just like known to superstar without the help of TikTok, without TikTok being the driver, was, I believe, Billie Eilish. And that's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 5 years. So that's within your timeline.
Yeah.
I think Billie Eilish is the last one
That's
where
a good call out.
Where it wasn't TikTok being like, this is it. So now you've got your Olivia Rodrigo, got Disney and TikTok driving, helping drive that. Her Disney fame start, and then TikTok helping elevate her. She might get there eventually. I don't know. Time will tell. And then I think there's like Boy Genius, obviously, who has worked their way up to be an arena artist, arena band, and that's a super group. And all of them had their stuff happening prior to. I mean, Phoebe was on her way prior to her TikTok moment, and all 3 of those women were doing really well. They weren't where they are now, but they were on their way. I don't know. We look at that at the Coachella, the Coachella headliners also. It's like Coachella headliners are always been in it for a long time. It's a lot of, even if as they've moved on to be more of a pop festival and hip hop festival, it's still, not new artists getting to the top. It's definitely more established long term. So I don't know where the next superstar is coming from, or if they can.
Yeah.
Is there a cultural place for them to be lifted up?
Yeah. That's exactly what we were talking about the other day. We're having the same internal conversations too. There's this element of like the cultural moment has to be right for that level of like superstardom, and has it passed? Are we going to see another
Yeah.
Beyonce?
I
I don't know.
I even noticed like I mean, Taylor's there.
Yeah.
Taylor's been at it for 20 years. But Taylor is now at that level that she's commanding. She's an industry, obviously.
Yeah.
And I feel like Olivia is the one who might have that in her. But even, my boss Ty was a huge fan of the new record, and we've been talking about it. But we talked about it for the weeks where it came out. I think the other challenge is culture moves so fast. So it's like Taylor's been able to kind of take over our brain for the last year by having the Epic tour, the social media campaign driven by her fans around that tour, and then the film coming out. And she's been able to, I think Taylor's a great example also of fan engagement, of just like whether that's driven by her or her fans. I mean, that is an audience. She owns that audience. She doesn't have to own that data anywhere, but she owns that relationship so well. And I know, is one of my big complaints whenever I do podcasts or panels or anything, of only talking about the big artists and being like, look to what they did, because obviously that worked for the biggest artists. So I'm not suggesting that's replicable, but she's a genius at it. It's not revolutionary. But the cycle moves so fast. We haven't talked about Olivia Rodrigo's album in 3 weeks, and it's been out for like a month and a half. It's just wild how quick it moves.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that speaks to everyone's attention span has gotten shorter with the creation of TikTok and just everything we have available to us on social media. And so it's like everyone's looking for the next big thing, but no one can really break that mold and become the next big thing.
How
like
much do you think... So I know that you also teach in music, and so, and I don't know how. I think mentally that related somehow. And I'll ask the question, and
it'll connect,
and we'll see if it connects. But just so that we know, hey, you also adjunct teacher in music.
Yeah.
But no, how much of you said that you used to be able to throw effort, money, and I think now you can still do those things, and those potentially could still yield. But right now, I think that there's more of expertise and effort, and But how much of a success for any artist at any level, even if it's just I want to be I want to make my life doing music. How much of that is going to be the viral moments, the figuring out the algorithm, and that type of behavior that seems to be few and far between, or lightning striking, versus very core behavior that is consistent, dull, monotonous, repetitive behavior, though, that is what builds foundation. How much can still be done in that kind of grind at work ethic versus those almost unpredictable moments?
I think both matter. The first time I ever worked with an artist who went from completely unknown to known, it was prior to TikTok. It was the first time I ever did it. It was 10 years into my career. I was part of a small group at Concord who was really passionate about the artist Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. And
the Night Sweats.
Nathaniel had been at it for 20 years as a songwriter, and been making a living, but struggling for 20 years. And then he put this band, the Night Sweats, together. And it wasn't the Fallon performance. The Fallon performance solidified it. Yeah. But what made it work, I looked at the data that night. We had Radian 6 at the time that Salesforce bought. And I looked at Radian 6, and it broke the night down by minutes. And you could see the Twitter activity around Nathaniel was at the beginning of the night. And that was when Jimmy Fallon held up the record and was like, oh my God, you have to see this performer. It is incredible. He is the best. He played the song. Questlove was like, oh my God, I'm a huge fan. Questlove tweeted about it. And the Twitter activity went crazy an hour before the performance. And then the performance happened and it blew up. And we went from begging people to go to his showcases to selling out, having to go to a bigger venue in his LA tour. And now he's playing, 4,000 seats every time he comes. Wow. And that was the first time I ever saw that. It was driven by television, but it was really driven by conversation. And I think that's something that hasn't changed, is that conversation is what's is still what's driving it. How do you create that conversation?
create the
But
conversation.
back to the grind element, we actually, another artist, flash forward to the last few years, we have helped an artist develop from relatively unknown to having a major record deal, an artist named Frawley, a pop singer. And that was done during COVID, no touring, just doing the 101 level work of putting out a record, putting small amounts of money into digital advertising with good partners, and then small amounts of money into influencer campaigns, and then putting out the next song and watching, not paying too much attention to Spotify editorial, because Spotify editorial is nice sometimes, but it's not gonna make a playlist is not a marketing plan, as some people like to say. But we would see incremental growth from song to song to song of the Spotify algorithm support. Then we would see the save rates go up, and we'd see people coming in and more fans. We'd see her Instagram following would go up. We'd see all the metrics going up slowly. And it was small investments. You're talking maybe $1,000 of digital advertising and at most a $5,000 influencer campaign on one song. And we would see it growing incrementally. And what we were focused on was advertising. I think this is the main point for any artist listening. We were focused on marketing for audience growth, not for streams. You will never get an ROI if you focus on advertising for streams, because streams are just not worth enough until you hit a certain scale. They can be worth a lot, but you have to hit a certain scale for them to be really valuable. So marketing for audience growth was really our focus. And so we would increase our Spotify followers. We would increase our Instagram following. And then as things would happen, more and more people would latch on to each single. And then she had a TikTok viral moment. And then that took our slow increased line to that we had the hockey stick.
Yeah.
And when she had the hockey stick, then she was making a living. She was at the point that she was able to make a modest living from recorded music before she signed her major label record deal. She signed the deal because she wanted to sign with Republic, not because she needed the
That's
money.
a great position to be in.
Yeah.
To make that decision because you have options.
Yes.
And not because
You're desperate
yeah.
to make it.
So then you have several artists that, use our text at .live. So John Legend, Head and the Heart, Lindsey Sterling, Charlie Puth. What role do you see? We talk about like you market to build audience and as opposed to streaming and then but in all that, your follower numbers go up on Instagram and and on Spotify, and there's value there. There's value in having the audience there, being able to reach them there, even being able to monetize there. But let's say without the moment that, again, is that once in a while moment that like shoots up, where is the value there as opposed to owning the relationship? I should say owning the access, the direct access, which is, fan data when we're talking emails and phone numbers. And is the value of that more in how you can monetize it, or is there value in, like just the number? Like, is it how different is that relationship than how you would manage that? I guess is probably a better question than those numbers on social.
So the number doesn't matter that much for us in email. The number matters a lot in social, because the reason when you're talking about artists on that level, a John Legend, having 15.9 million Instagram subscribers matters to his brand partners, matters to all kinds of people. His email list is strong. It's a 6-digit number, which is good for most artists. A lot of artists do not really collect emails on that level.
6 would
but
be
I,
a great
my
number.
whole,
Right.
Sorry?
I was going to say 6 would be, probably common for most.
Yeah.
So I have always, it's been a mainstay in my career that I've always advocated for artists to own their own email data because of what you were talking about earlier, that the third parties own the social media numbers. They do. And they limit how you can reach them. And social media is always going to win because of the network effect. You're not on Instagram just to follow Beyonce. You're on Instagram to follow Beyonce, Taylor, John, everybody, and all your friends are there too. So that's why I've never really been a big fan of the systems that try to move audiences off of social media onto other platforms, because even if you look at like Discord now, which is great, Lindsey Sterling has a really strong Discord, you're talking about 8,000 people as opposed to 2 million on Instagram, and that's a thing we're always working on. But then even Discord owns that data in its own way. But email is very important to me. Always been very important. I think that is your core audience. In the classic marketing speak of, your whales, dolphins, and minnows, I think a lot of your dolphins and whales are in your email list. So I am very focused on owning as much email data as possible. When I started doing marketing for artists, giving away free music in exchange for email addresses was a revolutionary idea. I don't know if you guys were in the business at that point, but when I started at Concord, I would have to look record label presidents in the face and be like, you will get more than 99 cents of value out of this person that you collect the data from than you were going to get out of an iTunes sale. Because that's the world we were in.
Yeah.
It was that one-to-one relationship of like, if I give you this song, you're not buying it on iTunes, I'm giving away free money. And that was an argument. That seems so quaint now, the idea of like giving a free download.
Yeah.
It's such like it's just a small idea. But we were able to collect tens of thousands of email addresses by giving away free downloads and then use that for monetization. There are so few reasons for people to give us their email address now. People are much more savvy. They are much more protective of that data and concerned about spam. So we really need to be providing value to them in addition. So I think what I love about the Set.Live technology, not to turn into a commercial, is that we're providing value in the room. It's a really easy user experience. On both sides, both as a marketer and in the fan receiving it. And we're collecting data in the live environment where we normally don't get a lot of that data. So touring is the number one way that we gather email data. Seated is another startup owned by So Far Sounds that we use for our pre-sales. So fans sign up for pre-sales and we use that to own our data. We make sure that all of our VIP partnerships that we do, when we do VIP experiences, that we own the email data from that. And so what Set.Live has added to that tech stack basically of ways that we engage with fans live is now we have something in the room itself. So we had the pre-sale, we had the VIP, but then in the room with the 8,000 people, we had nothing. Now we have something for that room.
So how do you get, I think selling something like you need to collect fan information to artists who are still on a relatively, either starting their careers on that beginning upward trajectory seems fairly straightforward sell to them. Like, hey, you create stability. How do you sell that through to artists like John Legend, Charlie Puth, even Lindsey Sterling? Or is it even about that? Or is this strictly like at that level, they have you to make those decisions and you're like, well, I care about that. And so they care about that.
It's a little of both. Honestly, it's harder to sell the developing artists in some ways because if they're younger, they don't think about email as much.
They have that music
John,
take me to the top.
John 100% gets it. I mean, John knows the value of owning that data. Lindsey Sterling has a larger email list than John Legend does.
Let's go.
Good for Lindsey.
We love to hear it.
She understands the value and she understands that relationship. She really does cultivate a relationship with her fans. So they are focused on it and appreciative of the fact that we think about that. So I do think they see value. I think there is always a concern in the back of everyone's head that like, what is the value of email in general?
Yeah.
Do people look at marketing emails anymore? But I really do see evidence that it's about the content and the value you provide them in the emails. We're currently revising John's email list to have more engagement with the fans. Lindsay, though, last week we just sent an email blast that was offering the ability to donate to her nonprofit in exchange for an entry to win a trip to Paris with the partner Fandium. And we raised, I think, almost $30,000 in like 2 days.
Wow.
And it had a 40% open rate. So clearly people are reading it.
Yeah.
And getting that when we provide them with something that they want.
Yep.
We raised money mostly with our email and a little bit of social to help people with challenges with medical debt. That's what her charity does.
I love that. So what are the numbers like for you? For the artists that are using our technology, they're collecting that fan contact info at shows, and then you're getting them into the email lists. What are the metrics looking like on your end in terms of an increase in ticket sales or merch sales or music streaming? Like, how has Set.Live impacted your bottom line for these different artists?
It's early. It's really early to say. I find that email is the best driver for e-commerce. Is the easiest place to see it. When we send an email, we see sales in our merchandise. I think that the example I just shared for Lindsay, some of those emails were collected through our email lists are all a mishmash of every email we've ever collected from many sources. So I apologize that I can't assign specifically.
That was
to
going to be
the
my next question.
Yeah.
We don't have big enough lists to do real segmentation and A/B testing of like this list does X, Y, and Z. So we kind of use our email list as a blunt instrument for the most part, with the exception of e-commerce automations. So they tend to be blasts.
Yeah.
So anything that helps our email list grow is good for us.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then what about with Set, you're capturing the, zip code. So you actually know, you don't just have the email address, but you know where they're at. Are you all doing have you all been doing something where you're coming back to a place where you've been able to specifically do like pre-sale or any other type of
not yet, but we're going to. Yeah, we definitely will. We're trying to improve our geo-targeting. Email geo-targeting in general is, I think, always a little shaky because people travel, they move, IP addresses get read wrong and stuff. So I'm always a little cautious about geo-targeting in email. We do it much more in SMS and like bands in town and those services. But yes, we do it when we're coming to town. We're like, hey, we'll be there. Sign up now kind of stuff. We always do localized marketing as well as best we can.
So speaking of the SMS, and again, I'm going to talk about it until they tell me not to talk about it. I think we already did a press release, so I'm going to just openly talk about it. But we recently acquired YoTixi. Or I guess YoTixi is the platform, but it's going to be, we're working on the integration for Set.Live. But the basic premise is that when a fan follows somebody on Spotify, then Tixi, they sign up and they'll say like, hey, do you want to, sign up for our notification services? Yes. And so then they automatically get notified when that artist is coming back to their city. So it'll automatically pop up like, oh, hey, Lindsey Sterling's coming back, here's where do you want to buy tickets? And it's just automatic. And so we're in the beginning stages of how do we figure out how to, is that something that is going to be standalone, or is it something that we can integrate into that Set.Live experience where they can give their information and then say, yes, sign me up for, the notifications, and then they automatically get notified when your artists are coming back through. So
I love that. I mean, I have said this to Spotify. I will say this to anybody who will listen, especially because you are a team that does this. The number one thing that an artist wants is someone to want to listen to their music. And then the number two thing that we as a marketer want is the email address and data about that person and the ability to reach them reliably. I think my biggest complaint, I've said this to Spotify before, is that the Spotify follower is not someone I can reach. The YouTube subscriber is not someone I can reach anymore. They used to be, now they got to ring the bell, and that's always, there's all kinds of stuff. we want to be able to reliably send a message to our fans.
Yep.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anybody who gives us that, we're excited.
Yeah. Without too many barriers and and cost. And so the more direct that reach, and then the cheaper that reach, it's just now we're
Invaluable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you some fun questions in here before we wrap our time. Do you have a hard stop at 3:30?
Let me look. Yes-ish. Within like 5 minutes, I have a record label call
Okay.
that I have to jump.
Cool. Well, one of the questions that we're asking all of our guests is related to a live concert experience, of course. How could we not ask? So tell the people, what is either your favorite or your most memorable concert experience? Could also be your first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll run through them. So my first is a weird one. KMFDM and Pig on the Symbols tour at the Birch Hill nightclub in Old Bridge, New Jersey.
Very specific.
I have no context for that at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying.
But how
I'm not
long
gonna
ago
tell
was
you
that?
guys.
Because you rattled that off like it was yesterday.
Right.
Oh, so I have really good concert memory. Like I just know every concert I've ever been to.
Dang.
Pretty much can recall city, venue.
It's like having a photographic memory, but you're like, it's concert
It's just for
specific. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
My wife does it for fashion. She could tell you what she was wearing anywhere.
Yeah.
And she's open about that. She's like, I have fashion memory. I know what I was wearing when I was there. I can do that for concerts. I can tell you usually look, I'm 40 now. That was when I was 14. It may not be perfect anymore. It's falling apart, but I could do it really well for a long time. So that was number one. And it's weird. German electronic industrial. It's kind of the originators of industrial music.
Yeah, let me write that down again. Give me the name.
KMFDM.
KMFDM.
Yes. Look them up. Listen to it a little bit. You'll get it. Started it's like 80s industrial, kind of a contemporary of new wave, like like predecessor to Nine Inch Nails, which going to favorite, I would say one of the 11 times I've seen Nine Inch Nails. I'd probably have to pick the Will Turn in 2008 when they were retiring for the first time before they came back.
Yeah.
It played a 3.5 hour show.
Wow.
And I had 5th row center balcony seats for 3.5 hours.
Dang.
For Nine Inch Nails, which was incredible. But I've seen them many times. I've seen them in
so-
club shows, arena. Yeah, that might have been 2009 actually. And then, but then the other side is like I saw Damien Rice play in a church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Damien Rice is such
So
a good
good.
show.
Yeah.
Just standing by himself in a church for 2 hours.
And did he do his like
That is-
loop stuff that he does where
He did a little bit of looping.
Yeah.
I love that.
He had a choir. He had like one drummer come up and play some stuff.
Yeah.
But it was one guy. 70% of the show is one guy by himself in a church with no air conditioning in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We were all I was sitting in the last row sweating, and it was magic.
Yeah.
So that's charisma. I mean, that is a songwriter.
Yeah, I saw him Southside Ballroom here in Dallas. Very memorable.
I have eclectic taste, though. That was just to point that out. It's not all heavy music.
You had mentioned punk early on, and so like my first show was Flogging Molly. And so I'm curious if you've seen them live. If you
I've
are
not
a
seen Flogging
fan.
Molly, but I actually
Or the business.
back to the Birch Hill nightclub in Old Bridge, New Jersey. I did see Dropkick Murphys.
Okay. Even better.
About 6 months after their current singer started. He's not their original singer. The guy who's in the band now had like just started. And it was Dropkick Murphys and H2O. Again, back at the Birch Hill nightclub in Old Bridge, New Jersey. That was probably 2000.
Yeah, I think Flogging Molly was 2002-ish. It was my first show. I lost my shoe in the mosh pit. My friend stopped the show. He's like yelling I'm on stage. They brought me up on stage. Told like,
They
where's
brought
the
you up
shoe?
on
Yeah,
stage?
and they threw the threw the shoe. It was up on the second floor. Somebody threw it, and then I'm like, I have my shoe. I'm like so embarrassed, and I'm wearing a shirt. I mean, I was a little skater dude, and I'm wearing a Spam shirt. You know, the actual food Spam.
Yeah.
And Flogging Molly does this little minute impromptu song about Spam while I'm up on stage.
What?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
That's
so,
dope. I love that.
you know, I was hooked.
Yeah. I think
I've been to shows where they were, but I just missed them. Like I think they were one of the opening acts for Green Day a bunch of years ago, and I just got there late. So I don't think I've actually seen them play.
I think my first show was, it wasn't until I was in college, but it was Dave Matthews Band.
Oh.
Yeah. That was
Why
a great
did you start going
experience.
to concerts in college? Like what drew you out to that?
Well, it's kind of what I lived in South Dakota at the time for school. So kind of like small-ish college town vibes. And it's what all my friends were doing. I've loved music and been involved in music and theater for like forever. But I don't know. I didn't have a lot of opportunities when I was in high school to go to concerts. So that was my first like real moment as an adult to be like, yeah, I'm going to go do this thing. And it was great. I mean, everybody was high and just living their best life. I wasn't high, but everybody around me was. So it's quite the experience.
Thank you for the disclaimer. Everyone.
Just for clarity.
Just for
Yeah. We don't have any problems. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. So another question that actually came as the result of a chat we had with Chris Fox a couple of weeks ago is, what artist would you like to see perform at the Sphere?
Oh, that's a hard question. I've been having a challenge with that. 'Cause
Yeah.
someone asked me, like, if Nine Inch Nails played the Sphere, would you go?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd probably go, but like I've seen them play in a club to 1,500 people. Like it would be like that experience is about the visceral experience of the band, whereas the Sphere is very much about the
Grandiose.
Yeah.
the
Of
grandiose.
the media. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like who would I want to see in that. I mean, like Tool is the one that everybody's kind of saying in the kind of heavier music community because it's all psychedelic and cool.
You're the
Another one that's
second
actually
answer
good.
that was Tool. Yeah.
I don't know. My problem with the Sphere, the thing that makes it hard for me to answer that question is I think the Sphere de-emphasizes the show. It de-emphasizes the artist and makes it about the artist
It makes it
performing.
about the performance.
spectacle.
And the spectacle.
Makes it about
Yeah.
the spectacle. So it has to be somebody that I just like want to let that spectacle happen. So I
Yeah.
think my answer is Sigur Rós. Sigur Rós, I think I would go.
Ooh,
with that.
Sigur Rós.
That'd be cool.
Familiar.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I think
Not saying
that's
they're
right.
my favorite artist, just saying that that's a spectacle.
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
would-
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that's kind of the idea too, right? Because
I still stick to. I think what would be the most fun is to have Guar. You know, like they could do some like
Yeah.
actual spaceship come down and like beam somebody up into this. Like it would be.
yeah.
Love that idea.
It'd be crazy.
I mean, I think Pink would be insane to see there too, because she does so many different like aerial, acrobatic, crazy stuff at her shows. So she would be. I would love to see the Chicks at the Sphere too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still like my mind's now going with Guar. Like they need to call it like the desolation of music, and then it's and it's like the universal intergalactic battle over the heart and soul of Earth, which is centered around music.
Oh wow, we went. Yeah, that was deep.
Could
We
they
went
like
there.
install blood hoses in the
I bet you they
Yeah.
could.
hosed
I
right
mean,
in your
you two
seat?
did a little rope, so I'm sure you could do blood hoses. It's the same thing.
Y'all are weird. It got real weird real fast.
If you don't know what Guar is, that was weird. If you do, then
Then you need
that
it.
was
Yeah.
weird.
If you don't know, you got to go look it up.
For
and
sure,
then
I'm gonna have to
you'll-
go,
Then you're
like-
on board.
Yeah, I need context is key. Context is
Yeah.
key for sure.
All right. Well, Jeremy, it's like I feel like I have my list here, and I'm like it's like half the things that
We
I wanted to
barely
pick your
scratched the
brain on.
surface.
So
Yeah.
we'll definitely
I
have
talk
to.
a lot. I teach a 4-hour class at USC, so the filling space thing is easy for me.
Yeah. No.
That
I
was
mean, no,
so
this
good.
is like 9 Inch Nails doing a 3.5 hour concert. It's like I'm sure it was entertaining from start to finish.
Yeah.
So we just need to have more time with you. So we'll definitely book you again.
Yeah. Really appreciate your time and sharing what you know today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, if anything comes up or you need anything in the edit, let me know. I'm around.
Yeah, definitely will. And then when you log off here, it might say, depending on the upload speed, it might tell you to hold on for like 10 seconds or something.
Great. No problem.
So,
Yeah, I can see it says 54% right now.
oh, it's at 54%. Okay, yeah, it's got a good bit.
Yeah, it'll take. I can leave it. My internet's not the fastest.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, Jeremy, it was a pleasure. Yeah.
Until next time.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. We did. And you know the drill. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, comment, and, just do all the things. Smash all the buttons. And hopefully it will lead you back to us for the next one. Yeah. Anything?
And that's the way the cookie crumbles.